Hello and welcome back to the Grapple Theory podcast. Thanks once again for joining us here today. Now today our very special guest comes to us from the continent. We're going over to Europe once again for the second time in only a few weeks, which is really great. We're really expanding here at Grapple Theory, trying to bring you indie wrestling from all over the world, not just the UK. And today our special guest has had 10 years, over 10 years, 13 years in the wrestling business. He's gone from, trainee to in the ring, and now he is the head coach at the wXw Academy over in Germany. He took over that role from Volta, which is something we'll be talking a little bit about in this chat. We'll be talking about his career, about the academy, about how things have changed during the pandemic. It's a really interesting chat. You're really going to look forward to it. Let me first of all start off by introducing our very special guest, the head coach of the wXw Academy. It's Robert Dreissker. Robert, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
First of all, thank you for having me on the show. My name is Robert Dreissker. I used to wrestle as Avalanche for almost 12, 13 years now, and recently switched to my real name, which is Robert Dreissker, and I'm also known as the coach, which is at the same time my real life job as the head coach of the wXw Wrestling Academy. Hello Brit Wrestling. Here I am.
Amazing.
Can't wait to answer your questions.
Amazing. So how long have you been in that role
for? Basically since February of 2020. That's when I moved from Austria to Germany to work in the wXw Academy. And that's pretty much also the time period where I started to implement that into my on-screen persona as well, just because it made a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And in terms of that, because I think, like you say, I think I heard about you taking over the role just before sort of COVID hit. So what was that like in terms of just having this, exciting new role and all of a sudden the pandemic sort of halting everything wrestling-wise?
Well, to be quite honest, it really sucked. And probably at the time, how should I say, in hindsight, it's always easy to say, I would have done that, or I should have done that, and so on. But at the time, to be quite honest, it really sucked because I was moving from Vienna, which is one of the most beautiful cities in the world, to an okay, but not really comparable to Vienna, area here in Germany. And I don't mean that to knock anybody, but it's just
Vienna's like top tier, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So for me and my then girlfriend, it was kind of hard because we literally moved here, which alone is actually pretty tough because you're leaving your whole like family and your friends and everything, and then all of a sudden you're just, I know a lot of people in wrestling, but it's still something else than family and friends for your whole life.
Yeah, home is always home. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
all of a sudden, there's nothing. So you move there to to finally become pro wrestler, and then 3 weeks in, there's no pro wrestling anymore. So, and also there's no family, no friends, and nothing. So it was a really tough time.
Absolutely. And what about sort of since I guess the summer of last year when wrestling started opening up again and things started going? Have you found it's been easy to sort of get back into the flow of everything?
I think there's a lot of different answers to that question. I personally, it was different because there was not a lot of wrestling, but especially in wXw there still was quite some wrestling actually, even though it was not on a weekly basis, but it was at least every 3 or 4 months. We had almost a week of tapings, which is a complete different approach, but that was what was possible. So there was wrestling, and at least there was something to look forward to. But it was also kind of hard to keep yourself motivated. Also, I am going to be totally honest. I gained a lot of weight during that first year of the pandemic.
Just because, I think we all did. I don't think that's
yeah. I mean, yeah. So I'm glad I got rid of that now again, and I'm back on track. But like the first year, it was hard to stay into shape and stuff like that. But when it comes to the wrestling part itself, I not really had any. I haven't had any problems really to to keep my focus. The problems for me was more like to keep the focus on the proper workouts and proper dieting. But the wrestling part itself, actually not so much. That was pretty easy for me to maintain the focus there.
No, sure. And talk to me about that in terms of the sort of like the tapings that you did, because we've spoken to people at Progress Wrestling over here as well, who obviously had the same, and they did their closed tapings while they couldn't have fans in. How is it adjusting to life as a wrestler who, feeds off the fans, off the crowd getting behind you? How is it adjusting to life wrestling when there's no fans there to sort of to pull you in?
So I mean, obviously there's a huge difference. But also, because I mean, I just mentioned, like, for me, it was not that big of a problem to get my focus up, because at the end of the day, like, the way I see it is, so yeah, of course it sucks that there's no people, or hardly no people. Like, maybe, like, at one point we had like 10 or 15 people allowed to make some sort of noise, which of course helps and makes it a better experience overall. But the way I always saw it was, okay, there's no people in the crowd right here, but when the red light is on, it means we're on.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be hundreds or thousands of people who are gonna eventually see it. So you better bring your A game, because how should I say, like, when people watch it, they want to see good, proper wrestling, and they won't sit at home and be like, oh yeah, there's no people there. So I understand that they kind of half-ass this match, like, that's not how it works. So for me, it was super easy to just keep my focus up, because I knew, okay, there's people are gonna see it, and on top of that, it's gonna be on the network also. So potentially, of course, there's millions of people who, for the next years, can stumble over this anytime. So it better don't be the shits. That was the way that I saw it.
No, exactly.
And that made it super easy for me to be motivated and go all out in every match. So
no, that's fair enough, and that's interesting to me, because we've spoken to a couple of people on this podcast who have said, sort of during the closed tapings or after, when a few fans were allowed back in and they were getting started wrestling again, that they found it quite tricky to get back into that mode, that mindset. I mean, you sort of mentioned it there, that the wrestling wasn't that difficult for you. Is it quite easy for you, when you're going to the ring, to sort of just click and switch on into that sort of wrestling mode?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I'm sorry for the short answer, but
no, but it is. Yeah, that's fair enough. Has it always been that way? Have you always been quite good at just sort of, just sort of turning it on when you need to?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think it's an experience thing also. But then on the other side, like, if, I don't know, maybe that sounds weird or anything, but if I, as one of the most experienced guys, are, like, I want to I want to lead by example, and if I have a hard time wrestling in front of people, then maybe it makes it, I just want to lead by example. Maybe that's the extra bit that just makes me function whenever I need to.
Sure, absolutely, and that's good as well. Like you mentioned with with doing this coaching now as well. I mean, how do you find that being that leader, both like you say, sort of like in the ring and also now out the ring when you're training others? Do you enjoy that role, that responsibility?
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing like co-trainer work for a long time before I moved here and took over Walter's spot as the head coach back in Austria. I was already training people for quite some time, but I was never like the guy, the first name on the paper. So I was always the guy doing stuff with the guy that's being trained while somebody else was in the lead. So I was actually quite experienced in that field already. And yeah, I would say I really enjoy see people progress. Like I really like to see people, often like the thing that's the most satisfying for me is to see a young wrestler that has like all the tools, like like a super nice workshop, all the tools, can fix everything, but he doesn't know yet what's even what is the project, what are we fixing, but like all those nice hammers and screwdrivers, they're there, but they just don't know how to use it, or they don't even know what they are building or what they are fixing. And basically giving people an idea of what could that project that you're building, what could it be, and then actually see people working on that with the tools they already have, and then have success. That's really satisfying to me. So yeah, I really enjoy to coach and help out people.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Volta there. Obviously now with WWE, he's doing fantastic work. But he's, obviously he's a huge name in Europe and over here in BritWres as well. We love him over here. So talk to me about him, and also like just the impact he had on your career and sort of what you learned from him that you now take into your coaching.
So I mean, Walter in the first place is one of my best friends for I don't know how long, like for like well over a decade now. So I was actually I was pretty lucky that he took me under his wing quite early. Because how should I say, like, I mean, there's a solid wrestling scene in Austria, but it's not that big, and you cannot really not really make a living in Austria just doing wrestling. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's really tough. So so he was basically the guy who helped me to go places, which in this case was wXw, very, very early. And through wXw, I was then able to go to Japan for like in total 9 weeks or something like that, which also helped me to progress. So how should I say, it's hard to like really narrow it down, because he's been such a huge influence on me for such a long time, like as a friend and as a coach or as a mentor. So it's really hard to just say, oh yeah, he helped me understand this, because it was just such a big influence over such a huge amount of time. So it's hard to just finger point at like one thing and say, oh yeah, that's the Walter thing I picked up,
No, sure. But in terms of I guess him sort of leaving that role and you sort of stepping into it, I guess both literally and figuratively, it's big shoes to fill.
Yeah, it is. But the good thing is, so I'm super confident that I'm not in that role because I'm Walter's friend. I know I'm in that role because like wXw and Walter was very comfortable that I'm able to do it. Like
Yeah.
it's not a thing like, oh yeah, here's my body and it's his job now. So yeah, of course it's big shoes to fill, but so far I think I've done a pretty good job if I'm allowed to pat myself on the back for a second here.
Absolutely, absolutely, for sure.
But yeah, like it can always be better, and yeah, I'll just continue. I'll just continue to work, and yeah. So far, I'm pretty happy how the talents around the wXw Academy have progressed in the time that I've been here. So
yeah, absolutely,
I hope it will continue like that.
And that must be really really rewarding to have had, obviously, and continue to have such a great in-ring career, but then to be helping this younger generation coming through, and then to see them making those same steps.
Yeah, I mean, like this, I would say that the steps are quite different, because just the landscape of like continental European wrestling, at least, has changed so much. Like I started out in 2009, and how should I say, like after CWA closed down in the late 90s, there was basically no wrestling in continental Europe. I mean, there was, but it was nothing compared to what was going on in the like decades before that.
Yeah.
So basically, wrestling started over completely. And when I started out in 2009, there, especially for young guys, there was not a lot of shows to be on. Like, if I had a booking every 2 months, I was happy. I was happy to have something to look forward to, and that was a regular normal thing for all the youngsters starting out. Like if you had 2 bookings a month, you considered yourself busy. So yeah, it's the same steps, but it's super different. Like when I see like somebody like, I don't know, Anil Marik, Danny Frey, or Ilya Bloom, like those are like 3 of their, I mean, with Anil Marik obviously being the most successful and experienced one of the 3 that I just named. But like those guys, they at least wrestle once a month on academy shows, and they can count that those shows are gonna happen. While back when I started out, it was always, yeah, you never knew. And then that's basically what I wanted to say. Like somebody like Anil Marik, who's starting out in the middle of a pandemic, wrestling, like, I don't know the exact number, but round about like 50 to 60 matches in his first 2 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive for starting out in a pandemic. I think it took me like, I don't know, 4 years or something like that, with no pandemic anywhere close to get to that amount of matches. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. To get the reps in front of a crowd and get that experience.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really interesting to me as well, because you mentioned sort of the scene in mainland Europe, and we had a few months ago, we had Christian from Body Slam over in Denmark on the show.
Yeah.
And he spoke about how the scene in Denmark is very much, people don't even really watch things like WWE even. It's mainly just about the local scene, but it's slowly growing. Is it the same in sort of the rest of Europe from what you've seen on your travels? Because I think when people think mainland Europe for wrestling, they probably think wXw is the main one. But what about those sort of smaller promotions in other countries? Like, do you see the scene growing and becoming more thriving?
So, I mean, I can only speak for the places that I've been to. I've never worked for Body Slam, and I was never in Denmark. I wouldn't mind though. But it sounds kind of familiar to the Hungarian scene. That is also, I mean, I guess it kind of starts to change after 16 Carat. Now that a lot of talent coming from there had the opportunity to shine, and they just took it, and yeah, how should I say, like did a good job in highlighting
that scene.
There's that scene exactly. But from my experience there, it's people are not necessarily familiar with WWE or know any other wrestling than the Hungarian wrestlers that they know there. But I would not say that's a common thing overall in Europe. I'm pretty sure there's countries where it is that way, but overall, I do think it's more like, okay, there's like people know WWE and also people know AEW, so they know wrestling, and then they attend a local show if they see a poster because they know what wrestling is. I think that's probably at least what I would say for the most part, but there's definitely exceptions.
Yeah, for sure. And as well with in terms of just the academy as well, bringing your talent through. I think as well, indie-wise, especially I guess as well, thanks to the WWE Network, when people think indie promotions, they'll think like Progress or wXw or ICW and places like that. So it must be nice to be bringing through that talent who's potentially going to get those opportunities as well to be seen by that wider audience.
I mean, on one side, yeah. On the other side, it's also a lot of pressure, like if I think about if like 19, 18-year-old me, would have had to wrestle on a product that is eventually gonna end up on the WWE Network. Like on one side, it's super cool, but on the other side, it's a lot of pressure because
for sure.
It's gonna be there forever, And if there's one thing that young wrestlers, I mean, and also more experienced wrestlers, like everybody makes mistakes, but usually you do more mistakes when you're younger, and those mistakes, they're gonna be there forever, basically. I mean, depending if you need to cut it out or whatever, but it's so it's kind of cool, but sometimes I also think there needs to be room for error for young people. So I think it's also good if there's shows that are like non-televised or like dark matches, if you want to call it like that, where people can try things and make their experiences, and not everything needs to end up somewhere on a like on a streaming service,
No, for sure. And is that something is that something you sort of teach in your coaching as well with these youngsters? Just in terms of not just the physical side of wrestling, but also the mental side and how to handle things.
I mean, how should I say? Like, it's not. So I do speak a lot with my students about stuff like that, like sharing, sharing experiences and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm walking into training like, okay, today I'm gonna tell you the story X from year I don't know 2013. Like, it's not like I have all those stories listed somewhere and then I just pull out whatever story is on the schedule for the day. It's more it's more often like an organic conversation where we would talk about stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely try to share as many experiences with them as possible, and hopefully, like the way I see it, like I don't train people, or my goal is not to train people to become like just as good as I am. My goal is actually to make people better than I am, and my goal is also to help people like prevent them from doing mistakes that I did. Even though also there, I think people need to make mistakes to learn from it, because you're only gonna find out that plate is really hot when you touch it once. you know.
Absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so I would say, yeah, definitely that's part of a coach's job to take care of his students for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And like you say, like that must be really nice as well in terms of especially for your students because they get all these little snippets of different areas of experience of wrestling. And then, it's up to them. They can sort of like hone in on one style or they can like have a mix of it all. And there's no sort of holding them back with anything.
Yeah, I mean it's cool, but also for a trainee, it's kind of complicated at the same time. I think it's super important to get different kinds of input, and out of those different like seminars and whatever, you basically form your own style and your own way of thinking about pro wrestling. But for trainees, it can also sometimes be confusing because so this guy's telling me it's a super nice sky blue. This guy tells me it's actually more like a greenish, and the next guy says, "Oh, if you look really closely, it's yellow," And then it's like, huh. I have no idea what I need to think right now because there's three guys telling me three different things about the on paper at least same thing, so that's very important because at the end of the day, everything is kind of subjective, but yeah. But yeah, it's super important that you make as many experiences as possible, and also sometimes it's also important because I know it from myself. Like if trainer A tries to explain to you that I don't know, this pen is the nicest red you've ever seen, like you might repeat it, but you might not see it, and then the next guy just says, "Oh yeah, look at that red pen," and then the light goes off. Like, "Oh yeah, it's red. It's a pen. Wow, great! I finally, I understood it."
Yeah.
So it's super important to get as many different input as possible.
No, sure. And while I've got you here, as an academy coach, because I think it's something that's quite important. Obviously, myself, I can't speak for knowing what this situation was like in Europe at the time. But obviously, a couple of summers ago, we had the speaking out movement.
Yeah.
And obviously, again, I don't know what the impact was on, say, the mainland European scene. I can only go based on what I know of Brit Rest and what you see on social media. But has that and the impact of that sort of shown in Europe from what you've seen, and has it changed the way that you guys work sort of day to day in the academy?
Yeah, I mean there was definitely an impact. I mean, I think it's it's also very well known that wXw or the academy had to let go two of their coaches due to things that have been brought up during the speaking out movement, and there was no question of what would be the right thing to do, which is of course let indecent people go. So the question was if there was. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I mean, one thing that we did that's basically has two advantages at the same time. Like we set up a camera in the training room, which, I mean, it streams to YouTube in an unlisted link, so people can watch back the training afterwards at home, which is a good thing just for study reasons, and it's of course also a good thing just to see what's going on in the training room at all time, or at times when training is going on and the stream is online. We also implemented like a kind of, let's just say, like a, how do I phrase it in English? Like there's QR codes on different places in the academy where you can just text an email if there's anything wrong, or if you want to say anything. But what's the right word? In German you would say anonym, so I guess it's
anonymous. Yeah.
So it's not like you're not forced to put your name out there if you want to say anything that you think is wrong or anything. So you can just like scan the QR code, or like type in the link and get in touch with me and the other people from the office, and we'll of course take care of that. So speaking out definitely affected the academy. Like basically, the academy lost 50% of their core trainer team, which in one way, of course, sucks, because it means 50% more work for
the others,
the rest of the guys. But like, it is what it is. There's no other option than again letting people go that don't deserve to be anywhere near a wrestling ring again. So
absolutely, no, perfectly put, perfectly said. And as well, in terms of, it's great to hear that you've made those changes, and that's obviously incredibly important as well. I just wonder, in terms of as a final thing, as the sort of like fallout from that, has there been any difference in terms of the intake to the academy, or like, just because we've had other wrestlers we've spoken to who were like, they weren't sure if they wanted to come back to wrestling after what happened and things like that. Has there been was there a bit of a sort of easing back in process, with that?
Like, I'm not sure if I get the question 100%.
So like for yourself, or for other coaches, or for anyone in the academy, was there a feeling of whether you should go back to wrestling, whether people could go back to wrestling, or whether you wanted to go back to wrestling after knowing all the things that had happened?
I mean, so for me personally, I mean, that was a rough time. Like, really, I mean, a lot of like hours and hours and hours of talks and video conferences and all that. So that time was really demanding, but it was just stuff that I mean, it was my job as the head coach to take care of stuff. So I'm not complaining or anything. It was just it was it was a time that I'm really trying not to think about too much, because it was dark weeks overall. But to be honest, I personally, I never thought about like stepping away from wrestling or anything like that, because like every time, and I kind of needed to learn it for myself over the years. Like, I used to get upset about wrestling actually a bunch, but the thing is, wrestling is not what made speaking out happen. It was the people that made it happen. It's like it's not wrestling's fault. It's the people's fault. It's the people that are involved that are to blame. And people are everywhere. So So that's what led to me like not really thinking about stepping away from wrestling, because wrestling didn't do anything wrong. A lot of people did things wrong, and I hope those people will not return to wrestling. I mean, unfortunately, as we see, some of them do, and I really don't like to see that. But it's not wrestling that fucked up. It were the people.
Yeah. No, I understand totally, and I appreciate you speaking about it so honestly as well. On more positive things, you mentioned a few names earlier, but talk to me about the academy you've got at the minute, and the sort of, I guess, rising stars of wXw. For any of our, say, British viewers who haven't got a chance to check out much of your product, who would be the ones to watch for you? Who would be the ones that you'd say, oh, these are the guys to look out for, especially for a newcomer, for someone who'd not watched the product before?
So we're speaking generally about wXw.
Yeah. For generally, and also about your sort of upcoming academy talent as well.
So yeah, I mean the academy talent is wrestling on academy shows round about once a month. So we just saw the debut of Ilya Bloom. I think he has good potential, but I mean that also goes for everybody else on the academy shows. I'll be super honest. I'm always holding back with too much praise for people who just started out,
Sure.
just to keep them grounded,
Yeah,
and
level-headed,
and keep them grinding and not make them satisfied too early. But I mean, all of them are talented, and they have the tools to be a pro wrestler. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on those academy shows. And for like speaking for wXw in general, I think obviously Oscar is a huge prospect. That I mean, he's kind of close to the academy now, but he was originally trained at the Fale Dojo and the New Japan Dojo, and then just needed to go back to Germany during the pandemic, and then he joined us, and so. Like when he walked in 5 minutes, like actually during warm up, I already knew that we're gonna use him on shows, which is something that I've never seen before, to be quite honest. So that was super impressive. So he's definitely, I'd say, on top of the list. I would be super surprised if we will not see him make waves internationally in the near future.
Sure.
That would be surprising to me. Also, Peter Tihani, I think, had his breakout moment at 16 karat. I think he has all the potential in the world. He is still super young. So yeah, I mean, I'm sold on this guy for quite some time now, so I'm happy. That's also like one of the cool things, you know, like as a coach mentor. Like I'm not his coach, but of course I'm mentoring him and like producing him in wXw, and it's cool to see when people start to see what you've been seeing for like for 9 months or 1.5 years or 2 years, you know, like
when other people finally get it and you're like, you knew it.
Yeah, it's very satisfying when something that you know is there finally catches fire in front of people, and then people are like, oh yeah, where did he come from? Oh yeah, he was here. You know, he was here a long time. It just needed a little bit more extra that that people were able to see also. So that's also something very satisfying. And then again, speaking about the Hungarian scene, Orji, who also debuted during Carrot Weekend at Inner Circle, and then had a match at the Wheel of Wrestling show on Sunday as well. She's still super green, but she's basically the female version of Oscar, if you ask me.
Sure.
Yeah, she has definitely everything you need to make it far as well. So yeah, it will be super interesting to see how those names that I just mentioned will develop in the next month and years. But I mean the list I could really go on. I really think that we did a really good job overall as a promotion, but also like in first place the roster in the last 2 years. Yeah, in the last 2 years, like the roster we have right now in wXw is really like I think the cream of the crop in continental European wrestling, and I'm happy that people start to see it now, and I feel like yeah, everybody involved did a really good job throughout 16 karat, but not only that, like also during the last 2 years, I really think like wXw for sure looks different than a couple of years ago, but I'm really happy with the group of people that basically found to each other to form like the new wXw roster, and I think there's a lot of great talent in there, from like champion Tristan Archer to like newcomers like Oscar. So I'm super happy overall with what we have right now.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, absolutely. We're going to look forward to watching that talent develop for sure. Obviously, as a sort of a BritWrest focused podcast, I want to get your views on our scene over here. I don't know, in terms of many names, how familiar you are with it. Obviously, I guess the big one is someone like Cara Noir, who, former 16 karat winner. It seems like you guys love him over there. But in terms of like other names as well, are there any sort of names over here from these shores that you're like, oh, it'd be great to get them over for like a show?
I mean, so to be quite honest, I used to follow British wrestling way more than I'm doing right now.
Sure.
Like every now and then, I like browse through the Progress shows on the network and through the ICW shows on the network. But I mean, there is a lot of great talent. Speaking of, for me personally, I would love to wrestle Rampage Brown.
Yeah.
But it's probably not none of the name that you wanted to hear because he's in WWE, so he's not.
Yeah, really... but he is an indie hero over here. I mean, Rampage is fantastic. Like, no, that would be a great match.
Like that would be, like, besides Cara Noir, that who I always really enjoy working with. Like if I could, like, just name drop one guy I want to wrestle, it's Rampage Brown for sure. Yeah. I think also, I guess if I needed to make a guess who's gonna make waves in the UK, would maybe be Will Cruz. I think he has a lot of potential.
Yeah, Will is fantastic. We've had him on the show, and he said, like, funny enough that you mentioned those two names, because he said, like, he wants to sort of fill those shoes that Rampage left leaving the indies and be like that next big heavyweight on the scene, which he's already becoming.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned those two names because that's exactly what he said to us. But, yeah, Will is fantastic as well. Will is great as well. And sort of finally on that, in terms of, because, again, like I said, it seems like, the wXw crowd really love Cara when he comes out. Yeah. And I know that over 16 karat, you had Wrestle Carnival come over and have like a feature match as well.
Yeah.
I just want to know in terms of just generally how that audience reacts to British stars. Because again, going back to Body Slam, they said that over there, the crowd aren't, the British stars don't get like the huge pops because people don't really know who they are. It's more about like using them to enhance the local talent. I mean, is it similar with you guys, or do the British guys, are they more well known over in wXw in Germany?
I mean, I think it really depends. Like, I mean, it's kind of clear. I mean, the example that you made, like, okay, if people don't know who somebody is, like how should they lose their mind over somebody standing in front of them that they just don't know, So, like with Cara Noir, for example, like in wXw, I think it also always depends on the city. Like in Oberhausen, I think it's a very educated. Like the fan base is very educated and they know people.
Sure.
So I mean, I would like somebody like Cara Noir like gets great reactions and. I mean, rightfully so. I think he's like up there with like one of the best wrestlers in Europe.
Yeah,
and maybe beyond. Like
for sure.
I really think he's really that good, and I like working with him is always like demanding but super easy at the same time. And we also have, I think, I mean, might sound crazy because like our characters and styles are very far away from each other, but I think our mindset is not too far off.
Sure.
So that makes it super easy and interesting to work with him. But yeah, like he's one of the, like when he's doing his entrance, like people are always in a, what's the right word, like in an awe.
Yeah, like
whoa. You want to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, and also like with wXw and like the production, like especially on something like 16 karat, it also helps the Cara Noir character.
For sure. Yeah, that grand feel.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it always depends on who the people are. Like for Wrestle Carnival at the Now Showcase, I mean, did they get the same reaction like a Cara Noir? No. But, you know, I don't know. Would I get the same reaction like Walter in the UK? Probably not, because I don't have that same legacy, if you want to call it like that he has, you know? I guess some people would know me, but most of them, depending on where I would show up, would be like, oh yeah, who's that big guy? Okay. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. Well, Robert, I really appreciate your time. If you've got time, we've got one more final feature here on the podcast.
Sure.
And it's called The Matches That Shaped My Life. So I'm just going to throw a few scenarios out at you, and you let me know what comes to mind.
All right.
So the first one is the first match I remember watching.
Hogan versus Flair, Bash at the Beach, 94.
Nice. Amazing. That's a good first match. And the next one might be similar. It might be the same match, but it's the match that made me want to be a wrestler.
Yeah, it's the same, yeah.
Yeah? What was it about that match that sort of drew you in so much?
I mean, whatever. I mean, I was 5 years old. And it was Hogan in his debut match. I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but, you know, I mean, it was Flair that was very unlikable. So, I don't know. I think it's...
Yeah.
No,
I get that.
That's one thing in general. I'm sorry. I think this is meant to be like a quick quick feature. But in general, like that's for me, it's a hard question to answer when people ask me like, "Oh, what made you fall in love with wrestling?" And I can never finger point it. It's just the whole
thing, the whole vibe.
The whole thing that was just like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever." It's not like one particular.
Yeah, no, sure.
One particular thing, just the whole experience.
No, that's fine. And again, this doesn't need to be quick fire. We're happy like to go in depth with stuff. It doesn't have to be quick fire if we want to chat about stuff. But the next one is the first live event I went to.
First live event was an indie show in Austria back in 2005 that featured the Honky Tonk Man.
Wow. Okay, I didn't expect that. All right. Okay. Was that what sold you ongoing? Was it?
Sorry.
Was that what sort of sold the ticket for you in terms of ongoing? Was because he was there?
So it was a wild show. It was actually, to be honest, what sold me ongoing was just the distance and finding out, oh, there's wrestling 25 kilometers away from my place, and there's this guy who used to be in WWF. Okay, let's go there. But I mean, I would have gone there anyway.
Yeah, sure. That must have been wild though, seeing the Honky Tonk Man in like a small indie show in Austria.
Yeah, it was definitely wild. Yeah.
Amazing. The next one is my favorite wrestler of all time.
That's so hard. Scott Steiner.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Why Scott?
That was so. I mean, it's super close, and there's so many people in the mix. But when I don't know, I just loved bleach blonde hair Scott Steiner being a prick. I don't know. Like it was just something that like me as a kid found so fascinating. Like I don't know, that guy. Yeah. And also like if you watch back like the like the early Steiner Brothers stuff. That's so much good wrestling also, like, and all their stuff in Japan. I also loved Rick Steiner. Like, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I don't know. Like as bad as the late '90s, early 2000s, for example, in WCW were in hindsight, I always loved Scott Steiner. And what, like, if you would ask me, what is my one of my like firmest childhood memories when it comes to wrestling, it's a handicap match, Scott Steiner against the Young Dragons. I think it's like a 1-on-4 or 1-on-3.
Right.
Where he just beats the living crap out of all four guys, and like there's I don't know, the match goes on for like 4 minutes, and there's, I think, 4 top rope bumps, and then at the end he taps out all of them in the Steiner recliner at the same time.
Amazing.
That's one of my firmest childhood memories.
Incredible.
And that's why I would have said Scott Steiner.
Love that. I love that. That's a brilliant answer. The next one, again, it might be a bit tricky, but it's someone comes up to you and asks, "What's wrestling? What match or moment do you show them?"
Rock Hogan.
Great choice. Yeah, incredible match. The way the crowd turns on it is just unreal.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
That's Yeah.
No. Yeah. Exactly. There's not really any words, is there? It's just that good. The next one is more of like a live thing, like actually being there. But it's the best match I've ever seen.
Triple H, Bryan Danielson.
Nice.
WrestleMania 30.
Yeah. That's a good match. Yeah. Absolutely. The emotion in it and everything building to it. Like, I know, like, WWE always sort of said it like, yeah, we meant for this to happen, but whether they did or not, it's just such a perfect story.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't think they meant that to happen.
I don't think they did either. They say they sort of act like, oh yeah, it was our intention, but I don't think it was. And the next one, again, similarly, so say not on TV, like actually being in person, would be the biggest pop I've ever heard.
I mean, so it wasn't. So I was at WrestleMania 30, and like the obvious one would be Bryan Danielson, winning the main event.
Yeah.
But I personally think the pop for Claudio lifting Big Show in the Battle Royal was actually the bigger pop.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, in my
sure. Like, the way you hear it is like
in my experience. So I would say that one. Actually.
Nice. That's very out there. I like that. The next one is, of course, the obligatory My Dream match.
It's too hard. It's too hard. If we're speaking about talent right now, I'd probably again need to say Bryan Danielson.
Yeah. I think so many people would, wouldn't they? He's just someone you'd love to go up against.
Yeah.
Awesome. And the final one is, again, it doesn't have to be a match, but it's wrestling's greatest moment.
Wrestling's greatest moment.
Yeah, just in your mind.
Can you give me yours so I can buy myself time to think about it?
What would mine? I've never been asked it back. Now I need to think about it. Wrestling's greatest moment in my mind. So this isn't going to be the greatest moment in wrestling for a lot of people, but it would also go down as if you asked me the biggest pop I've ever heard. I was in Brighton at Riptide Wrestling. And Cara Noir had a surprise opponent. So Cara comes out, obviously he gets a great reception, and he's in the ring, and his surprise opponent comes out, and it's Pac.
Yeah.
And the pop there, and that moment and the match that followed it as well, I think was like, I've not seen anything in wrestling that tops that for me.
Yeah. Okay, so can I have two answers?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so then I would go with the go first with the Ilya Dragunov return at 16 karat for the triple threat match, where he then went ahead and won the title.
Yeah.
And the other thing would actually be the part. So we mentioned Rock and Hogan as the wrestling match of all times, and I think the moment when Hogan kicks out of I think it was the rock bottom.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
like that kick out and that Hulk up, and if you look into the crowd, how like grown ass men are jumping like little kids. Like so, I would say like that Hulk up, that kick out and that Hulk up that happened. I'm probably gonna go back and watch it right after this interview is over.
I might have to as well. I'm in that mode now. Yeah,
Now that I'm talking and thinking about it, but that's just like that's the essence of pro wrestling. And if you would be able to like put that in a bottle and sell it, then you would be rich.
Yeah,
so
people would be.
The moment after he kicks out of the rock bottom, hulks up, and then like that whole. It's also probably the best false finish ever because I think he hits the leg drop afterwards, and then it's a kick out again.
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, great moments, fantastic. Well, Robert, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. Thank you to anyone who's been watching. Thank you for joining us too. And yeah, it's been great to have you on to learn about the Academy and about your views on wrestling and about wXw. And it's been fantastic. Wish you obviously all the success in the future with your work. We always end the show with giving our guests a little bit of promo time. So you know whether it's checking out the talent at the Academy, or whether it's watching wXw on the network or anywhere else, or whether it's coming to see you guys live or coming to watch one of your matches personally, like why should people come and check out you guys just as a whole, as an entity?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'm the wrong guy to ask. Like, we have actually quite some followers in the UK and Ireland, so I hope those guys see it and jump in and because they can tell you better what sets us apart from the UK scene.
Sure.
I think if you're how should I say? Like, wXw is storytelling pro wrestling. So if you are into story-driven wrestling, wXw is the place for you. If you like, quite honestly, if you're looking for super cards and you don't really care about like wrestling with backstories and storytelling throughout wrestling, it's probably not gonna be the thing that you want to check out. So yeah, wXw is storytelling pro wrestling with, I think, probably the best tag team scene at least wXw had in their entire existing right now. So I think if you're not sure, if you want to check out wXw in person, because it involves you need to fly from the UK to mainland Europe and stuff like that, I'd probably suggest start out with one of the festival weekends, which are either 16 karat or this year the tag tournament that's going to take place in October. So that could be, if you want to, 4 days of wrestling, including Inner Circle, before the actual tournament. And there's actually, I don't know if the plug is allowed, but there's actually nice reads on backbodydrop.com that are explaining in super detail everything you need to know as somebody from the UK and or Ireland who wants to come over.
Nice.
So yeah, I would choose one of those shows if I'm not sure if it's for me. Flights usually, I think, are all right from most UK airports to Düsseldorf. As
I think. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So I mean, let's be honest. Let's face it. You can't do anything wrong if you come over for a carrot. And I think the same goes for a tech festival. But we also have people coming over from the UK, or like had people come over during COVID. It was not really the case, obviously, because we didn't run that many shows. But people also just come over for shows in Frankfurt, for example. So yeah, I think, like, long story short, wXw is storytelling pro wrestling with basically the cream of the crop talent from continental Europe. And every now and then we also have people from the UK, just like Carl.
Amazing. Brilliant. Robert, thanks so much again for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. And if I can help you out in the future, just let me know.
Absolutely. Will do.